Here we go. Hi, I'm here with Dr. Jim Taylor. Hey, doctor, how are you?
Hi, Paul. Glad to be here.
I'm very happy. When I heard the name of your book here, I said I must speak with this gentleman, and then I read up a little more on you. And this is important right now. How to survive and thrive when bad things happen. 9 steps to cultivating an opportunity mindset in a crisis. Okay, and we're really in a crisis. Jim's up there in north of San Francisco, where there were some fires. And would you say a fire for some people north of San Francisco is a crisis?
Very much of a crisis. Their lives are threatened, their homes are threatened, no doubt, very much of a crisis.
Uh-huh. And so you get phone calls like we just heard, or I get them, and we had some nice sound, because when there's a crisis, it's not so easy to deal with them. We're stressed, we're confused, and our whole daily balance is out of whack. So what are some of the ways that we can deal with crisis overall?
Okay. Well, the first place to start is to really understand what a crisis is. And as you indicate, we also intuitively know what they are, but I'm a big believer that the more we can understand what a crisis is and how it affects us, the better we can respond. So, Paul, for me, a crisis is any event that arises suddenly, that disrupts our lives and threatens the status quo. And also that has long-term, potentially harmful consequences. And a couple of key qualities of a crisis are they're unexpected, like COVID. We didn't expect it. They create a lot of instability, and no doubt it's hit us in spades for sure. And most powerfully for us psychologically and emotionally, Paul, is they create 3 experiences that we human beings don't like: unfamiliarity, unpredictability, and uncontrollability. And what often happens in these situations, and we're seeing this very much now, especially among young people, is a degree of trauma, both short-term in terms of depression and anxiety. And I'm going to predict, Paul, that we're going to be experiencing all kinds of problems for the next 10 or 15 years as a consequence of COVID. And what's interesting about COVID as well, Paul, is that it's not just a health crisis. I wrote a blog post a while ago about how we are in a perfect storm of crises. Probably more crises at one time than we've ever experienced in our life, maybe in our history. So we've had economic crises like the Great Depression, we've had wars, we've had pandemics, but here we have a global health crisis, we have personal health crises, we have economic crisis, personal financial crises, we have a political crisis, we have moral crisis, we have leadership crisis, plus, you talked about fires in Northern California, we've got climate crises. So we are overwhelmed with this mega crisis.
We're crisised out.
We are crisised out for sure.
But unfortunately, you're never crisised out because a meteorite could hit us. And so, and maybe that's part of the, I know people that would, I got a buddy in San Francisco, who says, but I don't have cancer, as his saving commentary. But his back hurts, his knee hurts, his foot hurts, and he's got a long list of things. Is that a way to deal with a crisis? I could be not breathing.
Well, we'll certainly look at the bright side of things and having a positive attitude and appreciating what we have for sure. But here's the problem, Paul, is that we humans are wired to deal with crises. The problem is that the crises we're wired for are not the crises we have today. So if you don't mind, let's travel back in time 250,000 years to the Serengeti. And a crisis was being faced with a saber-toothed tiger or a rival tribesman with a really big club. And so that triggered us our survival instinct, which then triggered our fight or flight. And so we could get out of the crisis very easily, or relatively easily, by either fleeing from that threat or fighting the threat. The problem is that what worked then, Paul, doesn't work now. And so today's crises aren't immediate. They're not in your face. They're not easily solvable. They are often unforeseeable. Certainly nobody foresaw COVID coming. They're often distant and delayed. And also they're beyond our individual control. We can't find a solution to COVID. So unfortunately, what's happened is that we react to these crises in a very primitive way, by freaking out, by being angry, by being frustrated, by being scared. But those don't help. And so I call that a crisis mentality, this primitive mindset. And the goal is to switch to an opportunity mindset. Whereas instead of the primitive instincts coming in, we use what we have up here that separates us from animals, which is the cerebral cortex, and most specifically the prefrontal cortex. And that's associated with executive functioning, the ability to think, to be aware, to deliberate, to make conscious choices, to weigh risk and rewards, future benefits versus immediate benefits. And what I try to emphasize with people is making that shift away from a crisis mentality more toward an opportunity mindset.
So I learned this. This was one thing that came out of a series that I was involved with PBS. It was called The Brain. It was way back in 1982. It was the first big science series on public television, a long time ago. That we even started with Michael Tilson Thomas, one of the shows where he raises his hand and 100+ people all of a sudden play all at the same time. We go, what? How'd that happen? But one of the things that I would like to mention is that there was one of the stories in that series was about who can handle stress better, the gentleman or lady or whatever in the elevator who takes people sitting there all day and takes people up and down, you know, and so on. And are I'll call it in Yiddish, a mashugana business person or a crazy one running around and you know, all, you know, this now, that, this, now that, this, now that, this. And supposedly the answer is the crazy one, is that they're able to handle stress better than somebody that's maybe living a more or less stressed life. What do you think?
For sure. Well, if you think about it, dealing with crises takes practice. The more experienced you are in dealing with crises, the better you learn to handle them. And if your life is a crisis, small or large, because let's be realistic, Paul, we have crises all the time. If we have a young child and they have a tantrum, that's a crisis. If the power goes out, the internet, oh my gosh, goes out, that's a crisis. So they're crises big and small. And the more we experience them, hopefully the more we learn how to deal with them. And again, disengage the primitive brain and engage this opportunity, modern crisis mindset.
So what do we do? Go into a meditative state, we do yoga and stand on our head. What do we take a vacation on the beach and not talk to anybody for 6 years? What are some solutions here? You had 9 of them. I like the number 9. That's like
well, I'm probably going to not to go through all 9, but I'll go through a couple of key ones. One is to do the best you can, and as you suggest, have a positive attitude. Look at the good things happening in your life.
All right.
And one of the most interesting things about that is that it's simply a matter of focus. If we focus on all the bad things in our life, that these crises are life itself, they're our entire life, that's going to overwhelm us with stress. But if we can put it in context and say, look, we've got some challenges here. We've got some difficulties here, but there are some other good things that are happening in my life. I still have my job. For now, I'm healthy. I've got my family. And this is especially important to be aware that we want to be sensitive to the people who have really been hit hard by this crisis, the people who've lost loved ones, the people who have gotten sick, the people who lost their jobs. So I don't want to be insensitive about that. But the fact is, the vast majority of us are relatively untouched by this. Most of us hopefully have the financial means to survive. We're staying healthy. And so to look at the good things in our lives, that's one really big thing. It's sort of very sort of cliche, the power of positive thinking, but it really makes a difference. If you're thinking about the positive things in life, you're going to be less overwhelmed by all the negative stuff and all the crises going on.
You know, I was lucky. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to say a half a second because I was just a lucky guy. My mother's a librarian. She was a librarian at Temple Emmanuel here in New York. And my mother, a very open-minded woman, master's degree, like 1920 something at Columbia. She gave me a book, The Power of Positive Thinking by Reverend Norman Vincent Peale, okay?
Right.
I wasn't much of a reader, stupid little kid rebelling. My mother's a librarian. I want to watch the Boob Tube, Three Stooges, you know, shows that are meaningful. And so I read the cover, but it's so a positive thing. You are what you think, I guess.
Right.
You agree?
Right. I do completely, for sure. And that doesn't mean you have to paint a rosy picture, like life is great, but it's simply being realistic and saying, like, there's some positive things in my life. So that's really valuable. Another one is a natural tendency in a crisis to want to crawl up in a ball, sit on your sofa, eat Haagen-Dazs ice cream or whatever your little vice is, and binge watch TV. That is to say, withdraw from the world. So one of the biggest things I say is reignite your motivation. Find something you care deeply about and immerse yourself in it. It could be your work, it could be exercise, it could be art, whatever it might be. Because that is going to give you what I call, quote unquote, the warm fuzzies of satisfaction of doing something and positive and putting your energy into it.
I agree with you, but a pint of ice cream at Haagen-Dazs is not the worst torture that a man could have.
Clearly not. Not the best, but not the worst. Another thing is, as I talked about earlier, one of the great challenges is that we feel so out of control of the situation. We can't just make it go away. And so a really important thing to do psychologically and emotionally is to control the controllables. That is, we feel out of control in the big picture, but there are a lot of things in our lives that we can control. And that means doing good work, getting exercise, eating healthy, taking care of your family, supporting your community in many ways. And so by focusing on that which we can control, reduces the stress of that which we can't control.
Why are you a doctor? And you're a doctor of what?
I have a PhD in psychology.
Psychology, okay. How to survive and thrive when bad things happen. 9 steps to cultivating an opportunity mindset in a crisis. Now, but though this is like, this is number 17 or 18 is my lucky number too. You wrote 17 books. Did I read that right?
That's correct.
What do you like? Writing every day, a little bit of a book?
Writing is my passion.
Yeah, and thinking's your passion. So give us another of the 9, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Another one is to proactively generate positive emotions. Because one of the most difficult things about crises is they create in us a tsunami of unpleasant emotions. Sadness, frustration, anger, despair, loneliness. It just is overwhelming, and it can really drag on your life and lead to clinical depression, clinical anxiety, and so on. And so if you can do things in your life that actively generate positive emotions that make you feel good, do things that bring you joy, listen to music, play music, connect with your friends, socially distancedly safe, of course. Anything that brings you joy, happiness, excitement, pleasure, do those things, because that will offset all the negative emotions that you experience. And it'll make the whole experience of this whole crisis more palatable.
You know, I've been in the TV business a long time, making shows, 40 plus. And I learned at Fairfield University up here in Connecticut that, TV is a one-way medium in essence. And in essence, what's happening between you and me right now is TV. Zoom or anything else, I'm talking to you, or whether we had an audio, that's radio interview, and so on. But there is one thing I think is something that's needed to be thought on as well, is that because it's a one-way medium, all right, there's not, here we at least have an interactive medium, okay? So that takes it up a step. But it still doesn't take that step of where you're going to hug somebody, you're going to sit down, and you're going to see the body language, right? So, and you're a psychologist, those are like 101, 102, 103 classes of getting a PhD in psychology. How do we handle our new way of life at this moment? With loved ones, I can't go in my daughter's house. I can use the bathroom at the front of the house. She don't want me in the whole house. How do we deal with that emotional? I appreciate it. I respect it. You got to respect each person. How do we deal with what the lifestyle we're living in right now, October 29th, Halloween, a couple of days from now?
Yeah, sure. Well, one thing that's really important is that I talked about earlier how our natural tendency when faced with a crisis is to withdraw from the world. And that's the last thing we want to do. And this phrase of social distancing, I wrote a blog post about this not long ago, where I said that we don't want social distancing. It's bad language. What we want is physical distancing, yes. But more than anything now, we need to connect with people.
That's good. Good blog post. Good thinking.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And so we need to reach out to other people. Yes, we need to do it in safe ways, but wear a mask 6 feet apart over Zoom or Skype or what have you. But it's so important that now at an individual level that we reach out to other people and connect with them in any way we can. Because no, it's not as good as hugging somebody, but Zoom is a lot better than sitting alone by yourself, wallowing in self-pity. And at a bigger level in our country, we need to come together and connect as a country. And I don't want to get into a political discussion here, but the only way we're going to beat this crisis is by coming together and doing this collectively. So there's this tendency to want to separate, and we see it politically, we see it ideologically, and we see it individually. And what we need to do is really come together. And so really making active efforts to connect with people in our world.
I like that. You got some good stuff going on here. You're a smart guy. All
Thank you
right.
so much.
I'm going to milk you though, because I need to. Because we have maybe through 3, maybe 4. Give me one more. Just for, I've been nice, right? I wasn't terrible, was I?
No, you've been great.
Oh, okay, good. Just one more for the audience, for the whole home team. They say.
Yeah, this is such a simple one, underappreciated yet oh so powerful. Express gratitude.
Yeah.
There's been a robust amount of research that has found that people who express gratitude are happier and can deal with the stress of life better. And gratitude is an interesting thing. It's something that I build into my life when I go to the grocery store, whenever I see garbage workers, when I see police or firefighters. I express gratitude to these essential workers because they are making our life better and possible. And what's fascinating about gratitude, it goes both ways. So the person who gives gratitude, like, thank you so much for doing what you do. That makes me feel better. And the recipient, when they hear somebody say thank you and show the appreciation, they feel better. So it's a total win-win, a simple thing, but oh so powerful.
Those 2 words are, and in a, so I'm doing a lot, whatever, we're involved with some things, and they're international, the medical supplies, okay? Trying to bring in help get some supplies on the right people that need it, which is like everybody, but in the particular thing, nursing homes or hospitals or whatever. But in that work atmosphere, and people are, semi-stressed, big, scenarios. But when someone in the group, and say WhatsApp groups, we make these groups now, and somebody, instead of just saying bang, bang this, bang this, bang this, when somebody puts the word thank you in there, in the middle of it all, and it's not a real, business-minded thing, I'll tell you right now, the next email, the next thing calms down. That thank you is a big time 2 words.
Yeah, Paul, it is huge. And because we as human beings, especially as adults, particularly when it's dealing with kids, we want to solve the problem. That's how we make people feel better, by solving the problem. But you know what? We can't solve the problem. So what we can do, though, is provide the emotional and psychological support and caring and appreciation. That is, it's not a solution, but it's a salve against the pain and the struggles that we face.
And the point that I also wanted to add was that I think it's even more so important in the written word, because, once again, we don't have the face, we now have the television set, we have the audio, but if you're communicating, it's, understanding, I'm all upset that we didn't have a class in school, in high school, understanding communications, understanding media. In essence, I think, understanding that the sets fall down, the makeup comes off the faces, the articles, is the opinion of the management of that ownership of Mr. Hearst, or whoever it is, that owns all these things, and in this world, and they're all trying to do their best. I am from the positive. They're trying to do their best, but there's 10 of these owners, and you see a different opinion of the same scenario. So it's not easy to be alive. What do you think?
Well, no, these days it's interesting because it's certainly better than the Middle Ages, but the fact is we've become spoiled, and we human beings have probably in the developed world have become a little soft, and we're not used to these kind of crises. That's for sure. And so, I don't wish upon anybody in any generation, but it's the one we were faced with, and some good things can come out of it for sure. But more than anything, we want to work collectively to at least minimize the damage that's being done long term. And the way we do that is focusing on the positives and being appreciative and supporting other people around us.
It's going to be very great book. Once again, congratulations to you. I'm going to ask you one last question. It's called How to Survive and Thrive When Bad Things Happen, 9 Steps to Cultivating an Opportunity Mindset in a Crisis. And next time when you're near somebody, think it's physical distancing, not social. So I love that one. So I asked a lot of people, what does peace mean to them? Because we're involved with the International Day of Peace. And I would have had a concert in Times Square in Central Park, but not this year. So, Dr. Taylor, what does peace mean for you?
Wow. So I see it at 2 levels, if you'll indulge me. One is at the broader level where everybody gets along, kumbaya, and we're able to communicate and be open and avoid conflict. I also, as somebody with a PhD in psychology, I also focus on what is peace for the individual. And peace for me is just accepting oneself and being able to not be angst ridden. Free of angst for me is just the sense of like, I'm okay. Simple as that.
What's the name of the website?
drjimtaylor.com, drjimtaylor.com. I've got all kinds of articles. I have a podcast called Crisis to Opportunity, and you can find out far more than you'll ever want to know about me and my work on my website.
A humble man. Dr. Taylor, thank you very much. Appreciate the time. Talk again.
My pleasure, Paul. Be well.
Bye-bye.